Okay, so good morning everyone, and today we're gonna do some review for 1 hour, and I'll be doing some stuff like, but I'm still thinking where to put the camera though. So what I'm trying to do here right now is to create, yeah. Oh, create, you're right, create. Okay, who are them? Oh, they're running off. Anyway, where the hell am I gonna put this actually? I don't know. Probably just gonna put it around here probably. I mean, is it really okay to put it here? No, I'm not. I'm not happy with the things. So I'm just probably gonna put it here. Oh my god, oh my god. Definitely not safe though. This is the only type of angle I can actually do. So now we're gonna do some type of memorization, and we'll start taking clues by that, and then start memorizing the things that we actually wanted. Because right now, here's the deal. Today is Thursday, and for great books, 10 to 11:30 a.m. We will be just doing some lectures and so on, and because the quiz will be next, and then the next one will be the art appreciation. We will do some kind of cute art of coffee art painting. Sir Alieto is still not here, so we don't have any class from him. So we're just probably gonna finish the. We're just gonna finish really the art appreciation stuff. And now here is the ethics. The ethics is actually, we're gonna have some few short reports about that. And I mean I already memorized a lot of things about what we're going to do some report. So for today, also for the Friday, what would it be for the Friday? I'm kind of curious. What does it look like? Understanding the self. So we will have the reporting of introducing ourselves and how I describe myself in an image, a sketch. And reading and Philippine history, we're probably just gonna show off our books and some new points that we can actually receive. Now here is the propulsive communication. We will have quiz, and I'm going insane with the quiz, I'm not gonna lie. And then the teaching profession. Yeah, probably basically some pure ethics and so on and so forth. I was not even able to. Can I actually have a little bit of time for myself? Let me just put some powder. I don't like how I look today, so I would actually put some nice stuff. Okay. I look very gloomy. I can tell you what. So as far as I can go back to the time where we actually went for today for the whole 3 hours, 2 hours, we will just probably be busy with propulsive communication because I've already finished my assignments in all of them. I finished it like just yesterday after yesterday. So now I'm actually going to be very focused on my stuff. Make it more wider. Oh shit! I freaking. It wasn't good. God, this is not good. Put my phone on. I almost destroyed my own phone. Really bounce off. What up? Doesn't look for me, isn't it? Next one will be lipstick. Although I may not like this type of lipstick because it kind of just smudge off. I didn't like that. Maybe I can put like, how do I say it? It looks pretty if I use my finger. Morning, sir.
Morning. Early, ma'am.
Always, sir.
Education ba to?
Opo, education.
Taga rito lang sa Buanga.
Opo, San Roque lang. So it doesn't really look great. Good enough. Now I have all this other stuff. We're gonna do chicken. Now let's start with the memorization. Because I kind of look fresh now. Now let's start with this. What are the 6 components of communication process? Receiver, message, context, environment, channel or medium, and at last is the environment. Okay. Feedback. Stupid. Feedback. Message, sender, channel or medium, feedback, environment, context. And then now, what are the 4 basic principles of interpersonal communication? Irreversible, inescapable, complicated, and at last is contextual. What are the 9 basic principles of effective communication by Michael Opson, 2009? Clarity, courtesy, concreteness, correctness, conciseness, creativity, cultural sensitivity, cultural captivating, and concreteness, correctness, clarity, courtesy, concreteness, correctness, conciseness, creativity, cultural sensitivity, conciseness, and captivating. What are the 4 types of interference? Psychological barrier, physical barrier, environmental barrier, linguistic and cultural barrier, and at last is the mechanical barriers. What are the 5 types of context? Psychological context, linguistic, cultural context, environmental context, and psychological. Really? Oh my God! 5 types, di ba? Relational and situational. Psychological context, relational context, situational context, psychological context, and also the psychological context and environmental, cultural. What is the secondary level of communication? It is the meta communication, which means when I say I am happy with you while being serious, which means I do not mean what I say. What are the 4 types of unethical communication? Selecting, misquoting, misrepresenting numbers, distorting visuals, and at last is plagiarism. What are the ethical consideration in communication? One does communicate. The message received is not necessarily the message sent. The message received is not necessarily the message sent. Communication occurs simultaneously more than one level. Communication occurs simultaneously more than one level. What are the six person who are involved in the communication? Who you think you are? who you think you who you think you are? Who you think the person is? Who you think about? Who you think the other person thinks you are? Who the other person thinks she is? Who the other person thinks she is? Who the other person thinks you are? Who the other person thinks you are? Who the other person thinks you think she is? Think you think she is? Who the other person thinks you? Who the other person thinks you? Who the other person thinks you about? Thinks you? Who the other person thinks you think she is? Communication came from the Latin word communicate, and that is sharing ideas, messages, and these are the literally okay. What are the list of 6 persons involved in communication? Who are involved in communication? Now let's start. What are the 6 components of communication process? Receiver, message, receiver, channel or medium, feedback, environment, context. And now, what are the 4 basic principles of interpersonal communication? Interpersonal communication is inescapable, is irreversible, is complicated, and is contextual. What are the 9 basic principles of ethical communication, effective communication by Michael Obson, 2009? Courtesy, clarity, concreteness, correctness, conciseness, creativity, courtesy, clarity, concreteness, correctness, conciseness, creativity, captivating, cultural sensitivity, and consideration. I almost forgot consideration. Now, what are the 4 types of interference? Psychological barrier, physical barrier, cultural barrier, and mechanical barrier. What are the 5 types of context? Psychological context, situational context, relational context, environmental context, and cultural context. What is the secondary level of meta-communication? That is the... Hi, sir. That is the meta-communication, which means when I say I am happy with you with a serious face, it does not mean means I do not mean what I say. What are the four types of unethical communication? Selecting misquoting, misrepresenting numbers, distorting visuals, and plagiarism. What are the ethical considerations one does communicate? When the message is received, does not. When the message is received, it does not necessarily mean the message sent. The message received is not necessarily the message sent. Communication accuracy, simultaneously more than one level. What are the list of 6 persons who are involved in communication? Who you think you are, who you think the person is, who you think the other person thinks she is. Who you think the other person thinks you are, who the other person thinks who the other person thinks she is, who the other person thinks who you think the other person thinks you are, who the other person thinks you are, who the other person thinks you think she is, who the other person thinks you think she is. Communication came from the Latin word which means communicare. Now, the fact that I was able to memorize, Chile, spirito de labs. Are you alright? We will get down. Okay. Okay, let's start. Who you think you are? Who you think the person thinks you are? Who you think the other person thinks she is? You think the other person thinks you are? Who you think the other person thinks you are? Who the other person thinks she is? Who the other person thinks you are? Who the other person thinks you think she is? Who you think you are? Who you think you are? Who you think the person is? Who you think the person thinks about you? Who you think the person thinks you are? Who the other person thinks she is? Who the other person thinks you are? Who the other person thinks you think she is? Who you? Who the? Who you think you are? Who you think the person is? Who you think the person thinks you are? Who you think the person thinks you are? who the person think she is. Who the person thinks you are. Who the person think you think she is. Who you think you are, who you think the person is, who you think the person thinks you are, who the person thinks she is, who the person thinks you are, who the person think you think she is. Now we're gonna do some stuff. Great. Now I have to like do two basics. After this, we'll start memorizing things again. I will just what are the six components? What are the six components of communication? Receiver, message, receiver, channel or medium, feedback, environment, context. What are the four basic principles of interpersonal communication? Interpersonal communication is irreversible, inescapable, complicated, and contextual. What are the 9 basic principles of effective communication by Michael Upson, 2009? Courtesy, clarity, concreteness, correctness, consideration, conciseness, cultural sensitivity, captivating, and at last is the correctness, creativity, right? Conciseness, creativity. There are 9. What are the 4 types of interference? Psychological barrier, physical barrier, cultural barrier, and mechanical barrier. What are the 5 types of context? Psychological context, relational context, situational context, linguistic and cultural context, and environmental context. Yeah, what is the secondary level of communication? The secondary level of communication is meta-communication, which means if I say I'm happy with you with a serious face does not mean I mean what I say. What are the 4 types of unethical communication? Selecting, misquoting, misrepresenting number, distorting visuals, and plagiarism. What are the 6% who are involved in communication? Who you think you are, who you think the person is, who you think the person thinks you are, who the person thinks she is, who the person thinks she is, who the other person thinks you are, who the other person think you think she is. Communication came from the Latin word communicare. I finally memorized them. Yeah, clarity, courtesy, concreteness, correctness, consideration, creativity, conciseness, culture, and captivating. And now, what we're gonna do, just while we're gonna check some messages, if there are. So far, wala talaga akong, ano. So for today, we will start